anything this team needs, I think that I'm a guy that will step up and get it done.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and as always you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball. I'm not going to muck around, so we've got 15 games to break down from Friday. I hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving. That's all done now. The NBA is back in business, and we've got 5 games on Saturday to preview, so
let's get to it.
Straight into it. No mucking around. The monstrous line of the night, Russ Westbrook. Look, there was a few contenders. No doubt there was a couple of guys who put up some big numbers. We had a couple of triple-doubles happening, but Westbrook was enormous. 36 points, 12 boards, 18 assists. He hit 3 triples. He had a block. He was a monstrous 15 of 17 from the line. 9 of 25 from the field. Clearly not good, but you also know that you drafted Russ Westbrook knowing that your field goal percentage was going to be an issue. You knew this was going to be a problem, and it's what makes him a tougher own, I guess, in roto leagues. Not an impossible guy to own by any stretch, but somewhat of a tougher guy to own. You'll see later on, we're going to look through the top 20 players over the last couple of weeks. His head-to-head rank is a lot higher than what his roto rank is, but he's almost, over the last 2 weeks, he is averaging a triple-double. He's averaging 33, 11, and 12.5. and 1.5 threes, and 1.3 steals, and he's actually shooting 47% from the field over that time frame, and 83% from the line on 11.5 attempts. Yes, his turnovers are really high. We knew they were going to be high. We didn't necessarily think they'd exceed 5 when they're currently at 5.5, but you knew that was going to be an issue, and I think if you let turnovers distract you from drafting Russ, you probably somewhat of a mistake. But he's putting up some huge numbers at this point. I had no issue saying that I wouldn't have taken him at number 1, and I still don't think he's the number 1 player at this point, but those numbers are very, very hard to disagree with. The assists are coming out of everywhere. He's scoring at a huge rate, and the more important thing is he's starting to work together with some of the other Thunder players, and that's helping players like Victor Oladipo, and he's putting up some is putting up some pretty good numbers in recent times after we were a little bit concerned to begin the year. But Russ is your monstrous line of the night. Unfortunately for you guys, or not unfortunately, you guys watching the video, you can see I've got my Westbrook jersey up. Unfortunately, the Thunder have retired those jerseys. If you people listening, it's the navy jerseys with the vertical Thunder. I don't know, people hate the Thunder jerseys, all of them. I honestly cannot understand it. I happen to like pretty much all of their jerseys. There's not one of them that I dislike, and I know that I understand that they retired this navy jersey because Russ doesn't like it. I like it. I've got a Russ one hanging up here. It's a relic now, so I'm still going to. It's not as much of a relic as my orange sunburst KD Thunder jersey, but the navy blue Russ Thunder jersey is no longer going to be seen on the court, but will continue to be seen on this podcast. The waiver wire line of the night: Wilson Chandler. He was in a pretty good spot in this game with Danilo Gallinari being out, and then Gallinari's replacement, who was Juancho Hernangomez, was almost out, or also out. Then we had Will Barton out. We've got Gaz Harris out. So Chandler stepped up, and he had 32 points. He had 11 boards. He hit 2 triples, had 4 assists, blocked a shot, went 14 of 25 from the field, hit both of his free throws, putting together a very, very impressive season. He is under 70% owned. That's why he qualifies for the waiver wire line of the night. There's no reason that he should not be owned. He's almost at 20 points a game over the last 2 weeks, at 18 for the season. He's getting big rebounding numbers, career high rebounding numbers. He's hitting threes. He's shooting at a high percentage. Because he doesn't do much defensively. He's only at half a steal and 0.3 blocks, and he doesn't get assists. I do worry a little bit that his numbers will drop, that his rebounding numbers will come back, and that his field goal percentage will drop, because he's at 47% here. The last 2 seasons, he was at 43 and 42. Prior to that, 46, 39, 45. So we're talking about career high sort of shooting numbers. It's already started to come back a little bit in the last couple of games, but his shot attempts and his usage has gone through the roof in that playing time as well. He's hitting 38% of threes in the last 2 weeks as well, which is something that I don't feel is necessarily likely to continue. But Chandler has to be owned at this point. He's anchoring this bench unit despite the fact that he started today, and he's going to have this 28 to 30-ish minute role, which maybe 3 or 4 years ago, if you say someone's averaging 27 minutes a night or 28 minutes a night, it's almost a death knell for their fantasy value, but not in these times. There's so many of these guys with minutes being spread across the board with a lot of players. You're going to see a lot of contributors in that high 20 range, and that's where Chandler's going to be for the season. He is averaging 30 minutes on the year, but once everyone gets healthy, once Gallo and One-Show and Gaz and to a lesser extent Barton come back, some of the workload is going to be reduced from Wilson, but he's putting together some pretty good numbers at the moment. If you want to hear some more about the Nuggets, check out Locked On Nuggets, which of course is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, much like this podcast. You can listen to Adam Maris over on Locked On Nuggets. He'll discuss Wilson Chandler. He'll discuss the injuries. He'll discuss the somewhat questionable coaching of a certain Michael Malone and some odd decisions and odd rotational units that get used by Malone, which I'll touch on a little bit later on. But Adam will break that down on Locked On Nuggets. So check that out. He's always got some good stuff to listen to over on the Locked On Nuggets podcast. The young gun of the night, Miles Turner of the Indiana Pacers. We know that Paul George was out. We know that Paul George is out for the next 2 games, as is Kevin Seraphin. Turner stepped up. He went 16 and 8. He had an assist. He had a steal. He had 4 blocks. And the percentages were there as well. 6 of 11 from the field and hit all 4 of his free throws. Turner is currently a top 30 player for this season, averaging 14.5 and 7, 2.5 blocks, a steal, and most importantly, 54 and 79 as his 2 percentages. He's actually got scope to improve this as well with his 3-pointers. He's only at 28% from the 3-point line this season, and he can be a low 30s, a 31-32 guy, I believe. He can improve that, and he can get maybe up to a half a 3 a game. He's probably his ceiling for this year, but he's doing all this. I said he's a top 30 guy in 29 minutes a game. The last 3 games he's been at 32, with all the injuries to the big men, with Seraphin and George being out as well, and CJ Miles. And I think that his minutes are going to start trending up towards that 30 zone, and we're going to be talking about Miles Turner as a top 20 player for the next 4 to 5 seasons at least, is my prediction with him. He probably won't finish there this year. He's going to be a top 35 player this year, but really putting together some monster block numbers, brilliant percentages, which is always great when you can get. It's almost like prime Serge Ibaka, huge blocks, but really, really good both percentages. You can get good blocks and poor field goal percentage, or poor free throw percentage from more players, but to get 80% from the line and 54 from the field, it's not easy to do, and then get big blocks and then be an offensive threat as well, which is what Turner is developing into. So really putting together some huge fantasy numbers this season, and you'd have to think moving forward for Miles, it's really only going to get better for him. The dud of the night. I'd like to call on Josh and Barry, who are maintaining the duds of the night for this season, just to let me know where this bloke is up to, because Kent Bazemore, he's had a few. 3 points for Baze, 4 boards, 1 steal, 1 of 9 shooting. He's not a good player. You've heard me say this lots of times. He's also not this bad. His last 4 games have been an atrocious run. 6 and 3 he's averaging on 21% shooting. Now, he is not a good shooter. His numbers were ridiculously inflated last season based on a hot streak to start the year, but he is not a good shooter. He is still getting the defensive numbers. He's at 1.8 steals a game and 0.7 blocks a game, which is really useful, but he won't continue to shoot at this ridiculously poor level. But what it is doing is it's solidifying the idea in my mind that he's not good, one, and that with the Hawks bringing in all this wing depth through the draft, that his role isn't safe. That Taurean Prince, DeAndre Bembry, Tim Hardaway might cut into Bazemore's playing time. I wouldn't be thinking that Bazemore, despite the fact that he was signed to a ridiculous contract in the offseason, is necessarily locked in as a starter for the duration of that contract. He's just not good enough to be considered that sort of player. For now, in a 10-team league, I don't think there's much. He's not a must-own player in a 10-team league. In a 12-team league, I would still hold him. He won't shoot this poorly, but to expect him to get back to mid-40s, I don't think he'll get back to that, which is where he was last season. So I wouldn't be expecting that sort of a bounce back. But the defensive numbers are nice. The fact that he's getting 3 boards and 2 assists is okay. And when the field goal percentage comes up, his scoring will come up as well. So don't be I was going to say, don't be too disheartened. I didn't draft him anyway because I don't think that he's good. But this is probably closer to what he is than what we saw from him last season. I would still hold in at 12. Look, I guess it depends on who you're picking up, but he could be in your drop zone, but he's more likely to be your 11th best player rather than your 13th best player. So he's too removed from being the first guy off a squad. But it was clearly not a good performance from Kenty Bays. All right, let's what should we do? Should we go into let's look at the box scores first, and then after that we'll move in and talk about the top 20 players over the last 2 weeks and talk about some overvalued and undervalued players. All right, let's get into these games. There were 15 of them. Every single NBA team played. This doesn't happen very often at all, so I reckon we're going to be here a while, so strap yourselves in. The San Antonio Spurs and the Boston Celtics. This was the early game. The Spurs get the victory. Kawhi just doing his stuff. 25 and 10, 3 triples and 2 blocks. Dan Green. This is a good one from Dan Green. 32 minutes, 11 and 7, but the killer here for you as an owner is he got 3 assists and he blocked 4 shots. And this is why you own Danny Green. You love the fact that he went 3 of 4 from the field. That's awesome. And he hit his shots. But the fact that he was able to get 4 blocks and it's not fluky. Like Monte Ellis had a 5-block game last week and you go, yeah, cool. That's never happening again. But Danny Green blocks so many shots that is where his value comes from. I believe that he should be owned in basically all 12-team leagues. His 111 potential is awesome. He is looking a lot better than what he was last season, so don't let that sour you off grabbing him if he is available on the wire. Wasn't a great Pau Gasol night. It is a back-to-back for the Spurs, so maybe that had something to do with the fact that he was limited to 17 minutes. 0 points for Pau, 5 boards and 2 assists. Back to the early bad old days of Gasol after a really strong stretch. I wouldn't be panicking too much here. Dave Lee was also really good. 15 and 12 in his 18 minutes, only clearly a deeper league guy. And Davis Bertans played 23. He got some of Pau's minutes, hit 3 triples, scored 15 points. It came on the back of 6 of 8 shooting, so it's a little bit unsustainable there, but his minutes have been rising. His role has been increasing. So deeper league guys, Bertans is going to be relied upon as this stretch shooting big man, which the Spurs don't really have. Pau can stretch a bit and Aldridge a tiny bit, but not like Bertans. So he is going to have a role moving forward. We've seen Kyle Anderson eliminated from the rotation. We've seen John Simmons' role reduced a fair bit as well. So Bertans is going to be in there, and you do need to look at him in those deeper leagues. Pat Mills, 19 points in his 24 minutes. Not a lot else for him there, though. So, like a lot of the Spurs players, he shot the ball exceptionally well, and that helped what he was able to do. So, leave him for the D performance. While Tone Parker, not his best night. 7, 2, and 4. I still think there's a spot for him in a 12-team league, and he is owned in just 31% of leagues. So, he is around. He's not a high priority target, but he can definitely be grabbed, and I've grabbed him in some 12-teamers. On to the Celtics. Good to see Jay Crowder, after a couple of quiet ones with that ankle, bounce back. 18, 3, and 5 with 4 triples for Jay. Still only the 28 minutes. They're still easing him back from the ankle, which might take a while. 12, 10, and 4 with 3 blocks for Al Horford. Avery Bradley grabbed another 8 boards with his 19 points, and he had 3 triples as well. Another good game from Bradley. Again, once Horford came back, some of his numbers did dip, but good to see him putting in a big one with Horford in the lineup. And Isaiah Thomas had 24 and 8. Marcus Smart, the shooting has been atrocious from Smart. He had a really good start to the season, but recently he's under 30% from the field. But what he is doing, like in this game, 9 points, but 4 boards, 10 assists, and 1 steal. He is getting you almost 4.5 boards and 4.5 assists on the big steal numbers, good threes, like 1.5 of each of those. So if you're punting field goal percentage, Marcus Smart's a clear must own, and I do think his shooting will be better than this. So I think that Smart is ownable in pretty much all situations. He's getting a lot of assists recently. I think he's had 18 in the last 2 games combined. The defense is always there. The role is not going away for Marcus Smart. So always have a look at him, but just you do have to be a little bit wary of that field goal percentage. The front court, Amir Johnson, 17 minutes for no points. Kelly Olynyk, 9 points and 3 steals in his 20 minutes. None of these guys are going to get big enough run for us to really give 2 shits about, to be honest. Washington and Orlando. Scotty Brooks. 2 things. 3 things. Well, let's start with 2 things. Let's start with 1 thing. Brad Beal, 3 in a row, 38 minutes and over. This is not going to end well. It can't end well. This is a back-to-back as well for the Wizards. Beal, 38 minutes, 14 points, 8 assists and 2 triples. The numbers are good. This is not as good as the 42 he dropped in the last game. But the worrying thing about that is he played 38 minutes. I will never not be worried. Unless he's playing 38 a night for 3 months and nothing happens, then I'll go, all right, he's good. He's fine. But when a player comes out less than 8 months ago and says, I'll probably be on a minutes restriction for the rest of my career, and then they play them 38, 39, 40 minutes, I get worried. So Beal's on a real red-hot streak at the moment. As you'll see later on, I would be looking to move him. Scotty Brooks also came out. We're going to limit John Wall's minutes. We're going to put him on a minutes restriction. It's a back-to-back. He's going to play both games in the back-to-back, but we've been sitting him out for some back-to-backs. We'll play him in both these, but we'll do it with a minutes limit. So I suppose Brooksy is accurate when he said he does limit his minutes because he didn't play him 48. He played him 39. And when you're playing like 6 or 7 minutes higher than your season average, it's not a minutes limit, Scott. So there's a couple of explanations. Brooks is an idiot. Debatable. They pushed for this victory, which they ended up getting against a lowly Magic team, and consequently, Johnny Wall's barely going to play in Saturday's game. We haven't heard that's going to be the case, but you would have to imagine that when you come out and say we're limiting him in a back-to-back and he plays more minutes than he has in pretty much every game for the season, that he's barely going to play in the second game. Coaches lie. Coaches tell mistruths all the time. They learn off Alvin Gentry, who is the king of lying. And Scotty Brooks is obviously right up there with that at the moment. Markieff bounced back to his full minutes, which is good. 11, 3 and 2 with 3 steals, while Otto Porter 19 and 7. And again, ridiculous shooting from Otto. It has to drop at some point. He's going at 50% basically in every single game. Another 34 minutes for Gortat, 12 and 9. And the bench is atrocious. This is really terrible. But the one positive is that Marcus Thornton played just 8 minutes. He scored 2 points, and he is really, really not very good at all. Thomas Satoransky struggled. He didn't hit a shot. Kelly Oubre struggled. He didn't hit a shot. In fact, Thornton, Oubre, and Satoransky were a combined 0 from 10 in their 34 minutes on the court. So that's, you combine those into one player, and it's an absolutely horrific game. Satoransky's still the pick of those guys, but we're only talking deeper league stuff. We also saw Andrew Nicholson reintroduced to the rotation. He had 6 points and 2 blocks in his 16 minutes, but in terms of me trusting him moving forward, I can't. I can't trust Brooks, and especially with Jan Mahinmi's return imminent, that's going to further eliminate Nicholson from the rotation. On to the Magic. Well, they went with a lot of Nick Vucevic and Bismack Biyombo together, and if that combination continues to work, then Vucevic's value is going to continue to grow. 35 minutes for Vuce here, 17 and 17, and the kicker is he had 3 steals and 3 blocks and went 8 of 16 from the field. The defensive numbers are an anomaly. The 35 minutes is probably an anomaly as well, but we need to see what Vogel's going to continue to do with this front court. Now, Biyombo struggled. He played 30 minutes and had 3 points, did not attempt a single shot, and had 6 boards and no other defensive stats. It is very tough to own him in 12-team leagues. Obviously, Vuce is a must-own player, but he's not necessarily going to have this level of value in most games. A nice bounce back from Serge as well, 19 and 8 with 4 blocks and 2 triples, and Fournier just the 11 points on 9 shots, only 2 of 9, which is not a good conversion rate. Lord Alfred Payton scored well, 15, 5 and 5, but he played just 26 minutes, while DJ Augustine also played 26. He wasn't quite as successful. Let's look to the small forward position. Put on our safety goggles. Jeffy Green, 25 minutes for 7 points. He continues to be bad. Aaron Gordon played 25 minutes. He went 9 and 7 and hit a 3. Gordon still probably has more upside than anyone that's on your waiver wire. In a 12-team league, I am still going to hold Gordon for probably, I'll give him another couple of weeks, at least until the first week of December. In a 10-team league, I would move on from Gordon. This is not working really with Green in the starting line. Green is not good. Actually, that's not true. Not that I care whether he starts. The fact that he's playing more minutes than Aaron Gordon is the concern to me. You can start Jeff Green, do whatever you want, but play him 20, play Gordon 29. That's what Frank should be looking to do with this situation, and unfortunately it's just not happening. But Gordon's starting to look a little bit better, so there is some hope there. Again, 12s, probably. 10s, I don't think so. Mario Hezonja back into the rotation as well. 9 minutes for Hezonja for 2 points. Not that that really is going to mean much moving forward. Dallas and Cleveland, this was a smashing. Darren Williams returned for Dallas. He only played 15 minutes, rested the second half. He should be right to go for the next game. But with the game out of hand, there was no need to push him. If Williams is available in leagues, and he will be, I think he's fine to add. As for Seth Curry, the return of Williams does hurt him. 13, 4, and 3 for Seth in 26 minutes. Not 100% a must-own player. While JJ Barea is out, you can consider it. But once Barea returns, obviously Curry is toast in that situation. 11 boards for Andy Bogut in 22 minutes. But this game was just such a smashing that everything is spread right out. Dirk had 15 in his 27 minutes. The pencil went 12 and 5 in his 30 minutes. And Wes Matthews had 6 points in 29 minutes. This Mavericks team is really, really struggling, and they're probably... You would have to think they're packing the season in pretty soon. Nice to see Josh Anderson have a 1-1 in his 14 minutes, but clearly a deeper league guy only. As for the Cavs, they did their damage in less than 30 minutes. Love had 27 and 10 with another 7 triples. That makes 15 for him in the last 2 games, so that's a fair boost to that category in your league. Kyrie had 25 points on 13 shots, ridiculous field goal percentage. LeBron had 19, 5, and 11 in his 29 minutes. So this was the risk when I spoke about this a couple of days ago, that the value of these guys in DFS looks great, but how much are they going to play? Are they going to play enough to pay off? Tristan Thompson double-doubled after a down game, 11 and 12 for him. And as per usual, not a lot to really speak about with the bench. J.R. Smith struggled. I don't think... He's owned in way too many leagues. 76% of leagues is too high for me for J.R. Channing Frye, unfortunately, he missed the game after losing his mother. After losing his mother about a month or 6 weeks ago, he lost his father on Thanksgiving. So you would imagine Fry is going to miss a relatively significant chunk of time. I would have to guess at least a week at this point for Channing being out. And he was a decent 12-team stream guy. He can be moved on from in that case. But obviously all our sympathies go out to Fry and the rest of his family in what's been a horrific couple of months for that family. To lose both parents in such a short amount of time is obviously horrible. So our thoughts go out to Channing and the rest of his family. Charlotte and New York was an overtime game. Marco Bellinelli stepping it up again. 19 points in 33 minutes, 5 triples, 2 rebounds, and 3 assists. What do we do with Bally? I don't think we do much. I think we probably do him in a 14-team league. There was no Jeremy Lamb in this one. They said they're going to ease Lamb back in. Bally's had 4 or 5 good games mixed in his last 6 or 7, and that's great for him. But I think we're looking at a 14-team league guy, and he's available. He's owned in 3% of leagues, so you can probably grab him in a 14-team league and just ride this out because his role has been increased. Kemba 17, 5, and 3 with 4 steals. Batum had 18, 9, and 9, almost a triple-double for Nick. And Marv Williams, just the 17 minutes before suffering a hyperextended knee. It didn't look great. He was in a fair bit of pain. He's doubtful at the moment. I would think that that's optimistic. I don't think we're going to see Marv for the next week or so. Look, if you don't have IR, we already know where he's sort of sitting at the moment. He can be moved on from, but you want to grab Frank. Frank the Tank Kaminsky, 40 minutes for Frank, 13, 9, and 4, and this is on 14 shots, so he wasn't efficient whatsoever, going 3 of 14. I've been talking about him for about the last 2 weeks, I reckon, saying that something's coming for this guy, and it's starting to come, and here it is. It's ready to come all over the place. He's putting up some huge numbers in roles that are opportunistic, I guess. Zala's out now, Williams is out, but he's taking advantage of it. So Big Frank, you can go and grab him. Mick Kidd-Gilchrist, he struggled, just a 9 in 29 minutes. Probably still a guy to hold, but it's getting close to not being the case. And Cody Zeller, only 23 minutes, did have some early foul troubles that limited him, but looked great. 15 and 6 with 2 assists. I do believe that Zeller, ownership in 37% of leagues is ridiculous to me for Zeller. He needs to be owned in 12-team leagues, especially with this Williams injury. You're going to see Frank at the 4 more, less time for Frank at the 5, and that should be pushing. Zeller should be playing 28 to 29 basically every game, and I don't understand some of the Clifford moves to limit his playing time. Roy Hibbert had 4 and 8 in his 21 minutes. Obviously, he is for very, very deep leagues. For the New York Knicks, Mallow, this is a great game from Carmelo Anthony. He loves playing the Hornets, and they actually play the Hornets again on Saturday. One of 2 NBA back-to-back games where The same teams that played Friday are playing each other again on Saturday. It's twice. It's happening twice. It's a little bit weird, but it is what it is. Mallow loves the Hornets. 35, 14 and 5, 3 triples, 2 steals and a block. Very efficient. You're putting up some very, very big numbers. He was helped ably by Kristaps. He went 16 and 8. He hit 4 triples. He had a steal. He had 3 blocks. His shot wasn't quite falling. The 16 points came on 16 shots, but he still hit 4 of 8 from 3. He's very hard to stop. Derrick Rose played 38 minutes. It's a lot of minutes for Rose. 16, 3 and 5 with a steal and a block. Good numbers though, and a clear must-own player despite him having quite a few difficulties on the court at times. Brando Jennings, disappointment after a couple of strong performances, and this is what I spoke about maybe last week, is he did this a lot in Orlando, or even in Detroit when coming back from the Achilles. Big game, and then put together 3 stinkers in a row and get nothing out of it. And that's sort of what we've seen here from him. Joakim Noah returned. He started. He played just the 18 minutes. He's still a bit under the weather from this illness. 6 and 8 from Noah. I don't think there's much need to own Noah in standard leagues. Billy Hernangomez, 6 and 9. Koch had 8, 3 and 3 in his 17 minutes and blocked 2 shots. And both Koch and Hernangomez are your 16-team-ish type of leagues. In equal minutes, Koch has more value than Bill. Just what he's able to do from a statistical point of view is more valuable than what Hernangomez can do. Also good to see Mindaugas Kuzminskas play 24 minutes. Didn't do much with him, but I enjoy seeing that mop of whatever's happening on top of his head out on the court. The Los Angeles Clippers and the Detroit Pistons. DeAndre 12 and 9 with 3 blocks. Pretty decent game from him. Chrissy Paul, just the 8 points on 9 shots, but had 15 assists, so helped you out there. Not his best night, nor was it for Blake, who did have a triple one, had 24 points, but only went 5 of 8 from the line. The big story is probably J.J. Redick, who had 24 points. He was 9 of 14, and he is shooting at a ridiculous rate at the moment. There's no way that his shooting can continue at this level, so do expect a drop-off, and he doesn't help much in the other areas, but for now, just enjoy it. Also, a very good Jamal Crawford game, 14, 5, and 4 in 27 minutes. It's just not reliable enough for that to happen for me to consider him someone that should be on most 12-team rosters, so no, in case there's confusion, no, he shouldn't be on most 12-team rosters. For the Detroit Pistons, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, well, we're in the good Caldwell-Pope stage here. 16 points, 10 assists, and 4 triples. I reckon we're probably getting close to the next one being like a 4-point turd, so expect that to come from him. Drummond had 16 and 10 in just 26 minutes, had 3 steals as well, and was efficient, while Ish Smith had one of his better games, 16 points with 7 assists in 34 minutes. It's fine to own Ish for the next week or two. Johnny Lua played 33. He went 11, 11, and 4. He has a spot in 12-team leagues, definitely. He's not a must-own guy, but he does have a spot, and he's just consistently getting this role, while Marcus Morris and Toby Harris didn't play a huge amount. Morris played just 22 minutes, did have some foul trouble, scored 17 points on 13 shots, very efficient, but doesn't do enough for me to be a 12-team league guy. And Toby, just the 29 minutes, 15, 3, and 3. He's a significant buy-low candidate, in my opinion. We had the news that Reggie Bullock has torn his meniscus, so he's going to be out for a pretty significant amount of time. Stan Johnson, who had been overtaken in the rotation by Bullock, missed this game due to a suspension. He could return and play some of those Bullock minutes, or it could be Darren Hilliard, who got 19 minutes here today and had 9 points. So Hilliard's a guy in a 20-team league, a 30-team league. Now's the time to take a look at him. With Bullock out and with Johnson playing so poorly, we might see Hilliard become a short-term member of the rotation. Chicago and Philadelphia. Michael Carter-Williams got a problem with his wrist now, so he is still on the same timetable as his knee, but that's just an extra thing to deal with. Dwayne Wade, 26, 5, and 2 with 3 steals. Jim Butler, 26, 4, and 3. So big nights from the big guns. And Rajon Rondo, this is pretty much just a standard Rondo night. 26 minutes for Rondo, 6, 8, and 10 with 2 steals. The minutes were depressed because the game was somewhat of a blowout. So even when you see Jim Butler play just 30 minutes, you know that it's not an individual thing. It's right across the board. Rob Lopez, 10 and 5, solid numbers. Nick Mirotic, it's pretty tough to own Mirotic at this point in 12-team leagues unless a big change is coming from Fred Hoiberg, and it just doesn't feel like that's the case. So I think in a lot of cases, Mirotic can be moved on from. We had 22 minutes of Denzel Valentine, which I love seeing. Didn't produce a huge amount, but I just like seeing him getting the experience out on the court. So he is clearly just a just a dynasty guy. And RJ Hunter played 4 minutes, so shout out to RJ. Didn't do anything, but he played. On the Sixers, they were without Joel Embiid, who was out resting. We had the return of Gerald Henderson. He played just 19 minutes in a start for 5 points. I think he's probably still feeling a little bit under the weather. He'll be better than that, but not good enough to own it in most situations. Speaking of not good enough, Bob Cove, 20 minutes, 2 points. I thought we'd turn the corner on Bob Cove. Not a great night. The minutes were low. Foul trouble, blowout, but also still got 2 steals and a block. And that's where the silver lining is for me with Bob Cove. People are putting Bob Cove in the... Now, I've got a question today. Do I own Covington or Ilyasova? That's the level where people are valuing him. And I don't agree with that. I think that Covington should be owned in pretty much all leagues. But it obviously is frustrating. Source Castillo continues his red-hot shooting. 13, 5, and 3. 2 triples and 3 blocks. Unbelievable signs that we're seeing from Stauskas this season here. Ridiculous shooting numbers. Yeah, adding the 3 blocks here. Not a 12-team league guy, but definitely higher. He should be owned in more than 9% of leagues. I know that much. He's in consideration for the 14-teamers. Jolly Locafor got the start. He doesn't have a minutes restriction, but you know what? He has a talent restriction because he's not that good. He played 27 minutes and went 10-6 with a steal and a block. You can do so much better in a 12-team league. This is a game where he had the opportunity to go out there and go 18-10. No Joel Embiid, no Nerlens Noel. It's all Jalil. But unfortunately, he's just not that good. Embiid's going to come back. There's not going to be no limits on Okafor, except for the bloke playing in front of him. I do not think that Okafor is a 12-team league guy, and I've been pretty staunch in that decision. Richaun Holmes continues to show why, if he ever gets a chance, he is going to be really a threat to be a top 70 fantasy guy. 13-5 with a steal, 3 blocks, and a triple in just 21 minutes. This is what this dude can do. He can really ball. If you ever see a trade go down and he's just thrown in as a secondary piece, man, look at that roster, because if he starts getting a role somewhere, it's on. There's going to be lots to like with Richaun Holmes. The stats come in pretty big bunches. Dario Saric, 4, 7, and 3 in 22 minutes. Not a 12-teamer. And Ersan had 14-7. He's a stream 12er. He's more a 14-team leaguer, much like Saric. Jared Bayless played the 26 minutes, 11, 4, and 2. I don't mind him as a 12-team pickup, but the thing is here, he started over Spanish Chocolate. So the Spanish Chocolate time is done. He can be moved on from in 12s and probably even 14-team leagues at the moment. Him and TJ McConnell are going to be splitting those backup point guard minutes. It was 14 to Rodriguez, it was 12 to McConnell, and I think that's the way that it's going to run for most of this time, at least until Benny Simmons comes back. So Rodriguez can go in 12s and 14s. Timothé Luwawu-Cabarrot played 10 minutes as well, and that's cool because I like him. Brooklyn and Indiana, man, Trevor Booker, 10-10, 3 steals. Is this dude going to lead the league in steals? He's pretty close to it. Has to be owned clearly. Brookie Lopez, 20-4 with a block and 2 triples. Big percentage from Brook as well, going 8 of 13. Shawnee Kilpatrick, he started with Rondé Hollis-Jefferson out, 27 for Sean, 16 points, 7 assists and 2 triples. Just a borderline 12 guy. I don't think there's much point in adding him in a lot of cases. Isaiah Whitehead also turned in a big game. Just the 4 points for Whitey, but 7 assists, 2 steals and 2 blocks is a very good performance. Yeah, there's not much there long term though for Whitehead. We're talking about a guy that once Jeremy Lin comes back, he's going to be reduced to a significantly lower role, and then when Karis LeVert comes back, he's going to take more of Whitehead's minutes as well. So at this point, you're looking at him as a 16-team league sort of a player. Bojan Bogdanovic had 8 points in 26 minutes. Not a 12-team league guy in my mind. And Joey Harris gets the minutes. Didn't do a lot with him, but he can be better than that, especially in a situation where so many wing players are out. But don't get overly excited for big bad Joe Harris. For the Pacers, Jeffy Teague. Thank you, delayed soundboard. 24 minutes for Jeff. Almost triple-doubled. 9, 9, and 8 with 3 steals. But this game was over pretty quickly. So the big names didn't need to play much. Just the 24 for Jeff, to 23 for Miles. Monte Ellis played just 26 and had 14, 3, and 3. Didn't need to play huge amounts. 24 for Thad Young, and that's fine. Yeah, rest your guys up when the game is over. We saw Al Jefferson get bigger run. 19 minutes for Big Al. 16 points. 4 on 14 shots. So people will be pretty excited about that. They love their Al Jefferson. It's not accurate moving forward. He won't be like this moving forward. The games won't be blowouts like this. Kevin Serafin will be back. Don't get overly worked up about this. Little dog, Glenn Robinson III, 40 minutes. In a blowout, they don't care how much he plays. 20 points, 4 triples, 6 boards, 1 steal, 1 block. He's going to continue to start for the next couple of games, and he's going to have value for those games, and he's going to be a DFS option in those games. So your short-term ad for Glenn, even in a 12-team league, you might be able to get some use and some value out of him while George, while Seraphin, while Miles are out. Once, obviously, George comes back, then Little Dog goes back to a bench role and doesn't do a huge amount for you in that sort of a situation. Another spanking, Atlanta and Utah. The Jazz just kicked their ass. The Hawks scored 68 points. Man, that is a beatdown. The best thing I think from the Hawks' point of view is that Den Schroeder played 28 minutes and he went 16 points. He had 2 assists, but he had 3 steals. His scoring and his defensive numbers had been a bit lacking, so that's an encouraging sign for his owners. Tabo Cephalosha moved back to the bench. He had 11 and 7, while Kyle Korver had 3 points in a start. Dwight Howard, 4 and 7 is a yuck performance. I talked about Bays already. He had a stinker, but Taurean Prince continues to get it done. 9, 4 and 3 with 3 triples in 19 minutes. This dude's coming. He's really coming for minutes here. Now, whether he continues to take them, I don't know, but he's coming for them. So in a deeper league, he needs to be on your radar. I don't think he really ever becomes a 12-team league, this guy. There's just too many hurdles for him to jump over, but he's playing exceptionally well. He can score, rebound, hit threes, get steals, and block shots. That's a pretty good combination for a young guy. So the 20-team league, I'd grab him if I can and just see what happens, because I get the feeling that once everyone's back and it's not a blowout, he's going to demand minutes somehow. He's been that good. Onto the Utah side of things, Gordie Hayward was brilliant, 24 and 7 with 2 steals and a block. Georgie Hill had 23 and 5 with 2 steals and 5 triples, and Gobert went 10 and 10 with 5 blocks. So they're the big performances on the Jazz side of things. We had Boris Diaw move back to a starting lineup and have 2 points in 19 minutes. So I talked about him having a big game on Wednesday, saying this is the fluke, don't buy into it because he's not that good anymore. And here we have it. Trey Lyles onto the bench. 13 and 10 in 27 minutes for Lyles. Again, people are still holding Lyles in 12-team leagues. I don't believe that you should be doing that. I guess it always depends on who else is available, but I don't have faith in Lyles being a long-term, and not even a short-term 12-team league sort of player. Rod Hood, not the best night, 8 and 4. Great buy low opportunity though if someone is not impressed with Rod in this performance here. Don't like that Shelvin Mack played 18 minutes and Dante Exum played 5. Another curious Quinn Snyder coaching decision. Toronto and Milwaukee, Kyle Lowry, 19, 5 and 6, 4 triples and 2 steals. They need to cut this dude's minutes back. I'm sorry. It's just not going to work when we hit March. He's just playing too many minutes. It can't continue like this. I suppose when Darrell Wright comes back, maybe that helps a little bit, but who knows with Casey. DeMar DeRozan, 26, 7 and 4. Another 50% shooting night for DeRozan. Damari Carroll couldn't quite get the level of the last 2 games, but 26 minutes for 14 points and 4 triples. You'll take it. I'd go back and add him in 12-team leagues, depending on who I'm dropping, but there's value there. Bebe had 4 blocks, and the only other stat he had was 1 rebound in his 16 minutes, but 4 blocks you'll take, but you'll only be taking that in the 18-team to 20-team situation where you're likely owning him. Jonas Valanciunas, not a big night, but 12 and 6 is solid-ish, and Corey Joseph went back to being a very minimal contributor, even though he played 27 minutes. For the Bucks, Giannis Antetokounmpo went 29, 6 and 11. Awesome. Tone Snell hit 4 triples for 16 points. He'll do this, and then he'll have 7 points in the next 4 games. So don't buy into Snell. Look at him in 16-team league formats. Daly, 11 points, 3 triples, 8 assists, 1 steal. This is why I like Daly for 12-team leagues. 3s, steals, assists. He can get them all, and he did get them all again. Jason Kidd, another change to the starting lineup. We'll change the starting center again because Jason cares a lot about getting his players into a rhythm, so he decided to make another change to the starting center lineup. So we took John Henson out of the starting lineup and replaced him with Miles Plumlee because that went so well at the start of the season. Plumlee starting was brilliant. He's a great player. He works fantastic as a starter, and he played another 20 minutes here and went 5 and 3. There was no reason to have grabbed Henson. There's less reason to grab Plumlee. You don't need to do that. But what also happened is John Henson went from being the starter to being completely out of the rotation. So if you can work out any of the shit that Jason Kidd does, I'm all ears. So that meant Greg Monroe was back. 19 minutes for Monroe, 8 and 10. You're getting the numbers done in limited minutes. I talked about Aaron Gordon before, saying, who's got high potential on the waiver wire? Well, Greggy Munro might. It's frustrating, but if he's back playing 19 to 20 minutes a night, that can have back-end 12-team league value, as we've seen already this season. So grab him. Let's see where it goes. If he goes back to playing 6 minutes or DMP CDs, then move on. But his upside is clearly there. It just feels like there's absolutely no chance that Kid is just going to go, all right, Greg, you just play 29 minutes because these other two centers are shit. Everybody else can see it. Oh, I think they can all see it. Henson's not good. He can't play offense. He can't play defense. Miles Plumlee, decent-ish defender, but not really that good and offers nothing else. Munro, above-average offensive player, actually a better defender than those other two centers. So I don't know if Kidd will realise it, but if he's available, go and have a look, because this is a positive happening. Jabari just had the 14 points in a very empty line for Parker. Miami and Memphis, this is the other game that I mentioned will be repeated again on Saturday. The same two teams playing against each other. For the Heat, there was no Goran Dragic and no Justice Winslow. Dragic missed with an elbow problem, so we had the starting 1-2-3 combination of Dion Waiters, Joshie Richardson, and Rod Magruder. Waiters getting it done again, 15-4-4 with 3 steals. Own him in a 12-team league, at least until Justice comes back. The minutes are there, but they will get cut at some point. Jimmy Johnson, 31 minutes for him, 13-6, 3 triples, 2 blocks. That's big minutes and numbers for him over the last couple. I think he's a fine 12-team league guy to add, just knowing that you might be cutting him in a week's time, but the role seems to be there. Tyler Johnson played 33 off the bench, 22-5 with 2 steals and a block. Not a bad guy to add if we think that Dragic is going to miss more time. At this point, we don't know. It doesn't appear to be too serious with Goran, but Johnson's been playing 30 minutes over the last couple and putting up some decent numbers. He's not a high priority add. Joshie Richardson bounced back after a couple of substandard performances, 12, 3, and 4, and 4 triples. Good to see him getting the threes going, and good to see him getting the assists going as well, because that's where his additional value is going to come from. Magruder contributed in everything, 10, 3, and 2 with 2 triples, a steal, and a block. We're still getting inexplicable minutes from Udonis Haslem, 20 of Luke Babbitt as well, and not a great game from Hassan Whiteside. That makes 2 in a row poor ones from Whiteside. 4 points only, 12 boards and 2 blocks, and very, very substandard percentages. Derek Williams starting is just a mess. I don't understand what we're doing with that. On to the Grizzlies. Well, after the shenanigans of we're starting Troy Williams, we're starting Troy Daniels, the Grizzlies started both today. No, they didn't. I'm tripping. No, they didn't. They started Troy Daniels again. My mistake. What they did do is they started Andrew Harrison at point guard. So immediately, okay, Mike Conley's out. No, he's not. He's just going to play off the bench. I don't get it. I don't get it. 23 minutes for Conley. Yeah, a 1-1. 16, 4, and 3. Now, it's a back-to-back. I know that. They want to limit his minutes in back-to-backs. But why are you taking him out of the starting lineup to do that? You wanted to limit the minutes of Marc Gasol on a back-to-back as well and played him 26 minutes. He started. What was the point of taking Conley out of the starting lineup? I feel like it's just a coach just trying to be too smart. No point at all. Gasol had 9, 1, and 2, but did have 5 blocks, but minutes limited here. We don't know how long these limitations are going to continue for both Conley and Gasol when we're talking back-to-back sets. As for Andy Harrison, he played 35 minutes, 4, 5, and 7 with 2 blocks. Just the minutes are there. The production sort of keeps happening in little chunks. More of a DFS target, say, for tomorrow than anything else. But with only 5 games on Saturday, you can stream Andy Harrison in with the assumption that Conley is going to be limited again in the second half of a back-to-back. And with Jim Ennis out, and with Chandler Parsons out, that Harrison's going to get some extra run. So look at him. The minutes will be there for him, I'm pretty sure. Zach Randolph is out indefinitely, bereavement leave. He lost his mother on Thanksgiving, so like the Fry family, our thoughts go out to the Randolph family. Obviously, it's tough to lose someone, especially on a holiday. Life will never be the same for these guys who lose a parent on a very memorable day, like a Thanksgiving for you guys over in the States. So Randolph is going to be out indefinitely. That's giving extra minutes to Jarrell Martin and to Deontay Davis. Davis played 15 minutes, went 4 and 5 with 2 blocks, while Jarrell Martin had 6 and 12 with a block. Davis is the more fantasy friendly here of these two guys. 2 blocks in 15 minutes is obviously impressive. He's shown me quite a lot so far this season, Deontay. What do we do, though, with Zebo out? You look at him in your, say, 20 teamers maybe to add him. I still like him in Dynasty. Jarrell Martin's in that same 18 to 20 range, I would guess. Vincie Carter only played the 16 minutes again, back-to-back, and Tone Allen down to 24. Again, back-to-back. Wade Baldwin was back 13 minutes for 5 points. And Troy Williams had a nice 9 and 6 1-1 off the bench in 20 minutes after his starting snafu the other day. Minnesota and Phoenix. Big win for the Wolves. Gorgie Jang, 11 and 7, but defensively 3 steals, 4 blocks, really getting it done. Rick Rubio, not his best night. He was limited by foul trouble, and that's why he played just the 25 minutes, but 11 points, 4 assists, and 5 steals is very helpful for fantasy. And the fact that he went 4 of 7 from the field is good too. Townsy went 22 and 10. He had a steal, a block, and hit 2 triples. Good numbers there. And Wigo, he didn't quite bounce back, just shooting 7 of 18, but 25 and 5 is a decent performance after a couple of real stinkers. Tyus Jones was really good again, and I'll continue to tell you this, that Tyus Jones is a good player, and I believe if Tyus Jones and Chris Dunn went in the same draft class, that Jones probably would have gotten drafted at least, and if not ahead of him, almost right next to him. He is a very good player. Dunn played just the 11 minutes for 3 points and a block, while Jones, as I said, 6, 2, and 3 with 2 steals. He is buried third on this depth chart. Dynasty, though, at some point I feel Jones is going to go, and he's going to get traded somewhere, and he's going to have an opportunity to become a very serviceable, if not starter, a 20-minute backup sort of player. So definitely keep him on your radar. Zachary Levine, just the 13 points, a pretty empty line from Levine. He'll be better than that moving forward. And Nemanja Bjelica, 3 points, which was a triple. So good for him, but we're clearly only owning him in any 12-team formats. Eric Bledsoe had a quiet start to the season, but he's humming now. 23, 6, and 10, 3 steals, and 2 triples. And Tyson Chandler was back, and Alex Len remained the starter. This is great news. 6 and 11 for Len with 4 blocks. Have to own him. Have to own him everywhere. I did say this a couple of days ago, that look, let's own him and see what Earl Watson does, and he did it. Now, Chandler played 11 minutes, going 6 of 7. I don't know if this will continue to be the case. I don't trust Earl Watson. I'd like to see him play Len in this role for a week or so before I'm 100% committed, but Len should be grabbed. Devin Booker, not a great line, just the 11 and 2. Did have 2 steals and a block, so some good peripheral numbers, but not his best performance. And Brandon Knight dropped 15 in 28 minutes in another start. You got to keep holding him while TJ Warren's out, but after that, all bets are off. Good to see 23 minutes for Marquise Chris. He had 2 steals, a block, and 9 points, so that's good numbers. Probably more 18 to 20 team league guy, I believe, at the moment. And why wouldn't you find a way to squeeze more than 7 minutes out of Dragon Bender? Because you've got to give 28 to PJ Tucker, who does nothing, or 12 minutes to Leandro Barbosa. Or no offense to Jared Dudley, seems like a great bloke. He doesn't really need 20 minutes a night. You could give him 10 and give Bender 15, and I think that would be, I think Suns fans would be a lot happier now. Do we have how many Suns fans listen to this? If Matt Smith is actually listening to this, I know that Matt is. Any other Suns fans listening? Let me know what you guys think of the way that Bender is being used by this team, because he just needs to play. He needs to get involved more because he's better than some of these guys already, pretty much. Well, maybe that's a stretch, but he needs to play. Oklahoma City and Denver. You feel a bit dickish when you think back to some of the things you might have said about Victor Oladipo. Now, I don't think I said them. I was pretty bullish on Oladipo. I drafted him second round in a lot of drafts, and I would be lying if I said I wasn't thinking, why did I pick him when I saw the way that it was starting off? Russ, give him the ball. But I don't panic in those situations. I didn't trade him out anywhere. I didn't ever consider dropping him. You wait it out. And you should, because he's bloody good. And it's all coming now. 26, 4 and 7, 2 triples, 3 steals, superb percentages. He's flying. He's got a real chance to be a top 20 guy by the end of the season. And a real chance to be higher than that. You're getting it done everywhere. Domantas Sabonis, one of his better games, 13 and 6 with 3 triples in 28 minutes, but relying upon that's pretty tough. He's more of a 16-teamer guy, I would say. Enes Kanter, it is getting hard to continue to own him. 11-2 in 19 minutes. Just too many situations where it just doesn't suit. And with Sabonis playing well, Joffrey Lavernier coming out and hitting 6 of 8 for 15 points in 18 minutes, and him sort of stepping up. He had 3 triples, a steal and a block as well, Lavernier. It's getting hard to keep owning Ennis. Steve Adams struggled again, 7-5. Andre Robertson does not a lot, and Jeremy Grant played 29 minutes, and like Andre Robertson, he does not a lot with that either. So we often say, the most important stat is in fantasy basketball is minutes, but often it's not. If your name's Jeremy Grant anyway, 29 minutes, and he didn't do a huge amount. Not an ownable guy. Onto the Nuggets, they were without Gallo, Juancho, Gaz, Bardo, all those players without. So it was a short-handed team, and they almost got the victory over the Thunder. Should have. Still some curious coaching moves with this team. Jameer Nelson was good. He made some late mistakes. Playing Jameer Nelson 41 minutes doesn't seem great. 21, 4, and 13 is great, and he started next to Emmanuel Mudiay and put up some good numbers. What do you do with Nelson? I think that you're just looking in deep leagues, really, despite this being a great performance. Spoke about Wills Chandler already. Ken Fareed, just the 24 minutes, but 12-8 with a steal and 2 blocks. Really, if you own him, he's probably your worst player or second worst player, so he can be owned, but I'm not massively on board. Yusuf Nurkic, 8-7-3 with a steal and a block. Decent numbers. And what about Jokic? Well, he played 29 minutes, so that's a real positive. He only had 7 points, but 6 boards, 5 assists, 2 blocks. It has to be owned. It has to be. And you just continue to feel there's a light coming at the end of the tunnel. Not sure we ever needed to see 27 minutes of Alonzo G, but I guess that's where we are. 4 steals for him, and another 20-point game from Jamal Murray. I think you've got to own Jamal in 12-team leagues. He is better than Will Barton. Or is he currently better than Will Barton? Yeah, he probably is. And there's obviously more future in him than there is in Jameer Nelson. He's continuing to... he didn't even shoot the ball that well in this one. He was 5 of 16 from the field. He was 2 of 7 from 3. But still went 20-7, had 2 steals and a block, and didn't get any assists, which is something that he usually does. I think you have to own him. 10-team might be pushing it, but every other league, you need to own Jamal Murray. And you did need to own him probably prior to this, but now it feels like it's official. 17, 3, and 5 for Manny Mudiay as well is a welcome return after some of the stinkers that he'd been putting up. The Pelicans and the Blazers. Pelicans couldn't keep the win streak going. We had Drew Holiday. He played his 29 minutes off the bench. Much easier to get him more minutes when you're playing with less of a window to get minutes. That's how it works. 29 minutes for Drew, 16, 4, and 5. Look, you wish he could get 33 or 34. You shouldn't give a shit if he's starting or not, but you probably hope for him to play a lot with Davis to rack up those assists. The numbers are still good. Timmy Frazier did struggle with his shooting. 11.7 assists is still pretty okay. Now, I alluded to it. I didn't allude to it. I flat out said it that Alvin Gentry's a liar. And this organisation lies all the time. We've had multiple instances of it already this season. We've got Alvin Gentry throwing out comments that literally make no sense. We had him talking about about Archie Goodwin. No, we're going to play him. We sign him, we play him straight away. Cool. A week later, makes his debut. Dante Cunningham. No, just a bit of a knock on the knee. Look, if the game wasn't a blowout, he's fine. He would have been ready to come back in. Oh, actually, broken leg out 6 to 8 weeks. So there's either two things here. Sorry, Alvin, maybe on this one, I'll give you somewhat of a benefit of a doubt. There's two things. Gentry knew he'd broken his leg and just flat out talked shit, or the Pelicans medical staff is that atrocious that they went and said, nah, man, he's good to go. And Gentry went, oh, I probably don't need to. Like, the dude's got a broken leg. So either the coach is a liar or your medical staff is filled with monkeys on typewriters. How can you say that the guy is good to go when he's got a friggin' broken leg? You can't. Can you? I know this medical staff is horrific, but that is abominable. It doesn't matter in terms of fantasy because Dante Cunningham has no value. But man, how can you be that bad? Terrence Jones played 30 minutes, didn't get it done, and this is what happens with Jonesy. 11, 3 and 2. And this is why we don't place a massive amount of faith in him. 12 minutes for Bud. Please cut him if you haven't. Etuan Moore had 15 in his 24 minutes. And Solly Hill got the start with Dante out 5 and 6 with a 1-1. So good numbers, but it's a 16-teamer for Solly. Onto the Blazers. Dame had 27, 4 and 11. CJ had 24, 1 and 3 with 2 steals. And both guys got they both shot exactly the same, 9 of 19 from the field. Almost the triple-double from Mason Plumlee, 12, 14 and 8. Continues to put up very, very good numbers. And he's not owned in every 10-team league. You probably need to rectify that. 19 and 11 for Mo Harkless. You know what I'm going to say? Own him. I mean, he's 43% owned. Needs to be owned. Myers Leonard, this power forward position is bullshit. It keeps changing every game. Leonard bounced back here. 15 and 9 with 3 triples and a block in 22 minutes. Ed Davis started, played 28 and went 9 of 6 with a steal and a block. So there's nothing there to really tickle your fancy in 12-team leagues, but there's all appeal in those guys for the deeper league formats. Evan Turner dropped back 7, 4 and 4 in his 25 minutes, and Alan Crabb continues to be he's just not that good of a player. 4 points in 18 minutes for Crabby, and you should be pretty well aware that you don't own Alan Crabb. The Rockets and the Kings. Trev Ariza, big night there. 6 triples for his 18 points. 9 boards and 2 steals. Jim Harden, just another triple-double. 23, 10 and 10. And Clint Capella, 17 and 10 with 2 blocks. Boogie didn't bother him from getting 30 minutes, which is great. And the numbers just continue to roll for Big Clint. And D'Antoni is trusting him, so that's awesome. Ryan Anderson is terrible. 13 points. No rebounds. None. Did have 4 assists, so that's fluky. I think you still own Anderson, but man, if in a 10-team league, it's getting tough. Eric Gordon had 14 with 4 threes, and I think even with Gordon in a 10-team league, he's a borderline player. Pat Bev, 31 minutes, 7, 7 and 6, 2 steals, 2 threes, and that's almost the epitome of Patrick Beverley's fantasy value, and it's definitely got use in 12-team situations. Sam Decker, minutes watch, more than Corey Brewer. Didn't perform that well, 3, 2 and 3, but not horribly well. Brewer dropped 10 points in his 13 minutes. Onto the Kings, 32 and 9 for Boogie. He hit 5 triples. He had 5 blocks, and he went 12 of 22 from the field. Man, he continues to be great. Costa Koufos, 10 and 5 in 18 minutes, playing much better off the bench. The Kings changed the starting lineup up again, put Ty Lawson in for Aaron Aflalo, and then changed it again at halftime. So, in effect, Aflalo and Lawson are just going to be flip-flopping around, and you never wanted to own Aflalo regardless of his status, and Lawson's minutes are going to be in this mid to high 20-ish range, and that's going to make it really tough to own him on the regular basis. Out of nowhere, Omri Caspi played 28 minutes. So that's always great when shit like that comes from nowhere. 7, 4, and 5 from Caspi for a guy that was not in the rotation whatsoever. And we had Matt Barnes at least put something together. 12, 3, and 2 in 33. I do believe that Barnes has 12-team value. I know I sound stupid, but I do believe he's got that value. Garrett Temple, 9 and 3 with 2 steals, while Benny McLemore just the 4 minutes. As for Aflalo, he played just 16 minutes despite starting the second half, and he continues to be very, very bad. Golden State and the Lakers, pretty comfortable victory for the Warriors here. 29, 6 and 9 with 2 blocks for Durant. 24, 5 and 5 with 3 steals for Curry. Draymond suffered an ankle contusion. He did not return to the game when it was out of hand. 26 minutes for Draymond, 12, 8, 4, 3, 1. So good across the board production. And Ian Clark also was unable to return because he got kicked in the throat by Draymond Green, and that's why he wasn't able to return. He had 3 points in his 9 minutes. We had a good game from Kevon Looney, 6 points in 13 minutes with a couple of blocks. I think he's showing a fair bit, Looney. So it's obviously a very, very deep dynasty situation. But he's showing more than definitely what we saw from him last year. Not a good shooting night from Clay. Still had 18, but it took 17 shots. We know there's going to be good shooting nights, and there's going to be some poor ones thrown in there. So don't need to overreact too much to that. Now the Lakers were without Julius Randle. They were without D'Angelo Russell. They were also without Uncle P, who's got a toe issue. So we had a starting lineup consisting of Jordy Clarkson, Jose Calderon, Brandon Ingram, Tim Mozgov, and Luol Deng. And Clarkson played 38 minutes. It was great. 20 points, 4 triples, 5 steals. Hopefully you held on to him through some of the leaner patches earlier on. Look, his minutes will obviously drop from this when Young and Russell are back, but he's putting up some decent numbers most nights. 1-1 from Jose Calderon. You don't get that too often. 6 assists. He is a great assist streamer. but not a must-own 12-team league guy. Lazar Nance, there's a real opportunity for him to put up numbers with Randall out. Has not happened. Just the 20 minutes here, 11 and 7 with a steal. They're still okay numbers, but very hard to justify that in a 12-team situation. Ingram, 39 minutes, coming off from his 35 on Wednesday, 8 and 9, 2 steals and a block. He was 3 of 18 from the field. So this is the problem with him, is his shots, his shot selection, and his ability to convert his shooting. The defensive stuff is great. 2 steals and a block is really good from Ingram. He is going to be an ownable fantasy player by the end of the year. He just isn't at that point yet, despite getting these big minutes. Luol Deng continues to struggle. Mozgov's not playing big minutes. And we had a Tom Robinson cameo. He played 16 minutes and grabbed 10 boards with all the injuries here. All right, that is all of the games done from Friday. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to look back at the last 2 weeks of action and go through the top 20 players from a head-to-head basis and just see where players are tracking over this time. Bring it up on the screen for you guys watching along. We'll go reverse order. At number 20 is Kyle Lowry. At number 19 is Dame Lillard. At 18, Paulie George. 17, Brad Beal. That's unsustainable. That is a sell high. 16, Jeffy Teague. Ditto. He's not staying in the top 20. That is a sell high if you can. A lot of his value is boosted by Paulie George's absence. 15 is Hassan Whiteside. 14 is Al Horford. LeBron at 13. Kevin Love at 12. So I don't think many people would have expected the highest ranking Cavalier player to be Kevin Love, but here we are. DeMarcus Cousins at 11. The top 10, Jim Butler at 10. Johnny Wall at 9. Chrissy Paul at 8. Georgie Hill at 7. Now that's only 2 games worth, but it is where he is. He's not going to stay that high, obviously, but I don't imagine you're going to be able to get sell-high value out of him, especially not to that level. Jim Harden at 6, Kevin Durant at 5, Steph at 4, Giannis at 3, Russ at 2, and Tony Davis comes in at number 1 over the last 2 weeks. What I then did is went through all of the rankings and picked out some players who might be considered undervalued or overvalued based on what their current rank is. The overvalued guys, aside from those 2 in the top 20 that I just mentioned, Teague and Beal, JJ Redick is currently ranked 36th over the last 2 weeks. His lack of stats in the other categories means that this ranking is fueled by unsustainable shooting percentages, and it is bound to come down. If someone believes that JJ Redick is even a top 50 guy, you take another top 50 player back in return. Trevor Booker at 44, he continues to get these numbers, and while I believe he's a must-own player, I do not believe that he's a top 50 type player. So it depends on if you can get it back. But have a look at it. Again, a lot of people will be looking at recent rankings. They might look at it on Basketball Monster. They might look at ESPN's Player Rater. They might look at Yahoo's player rankings. And they might see some players ranked higher. So that's why you attack this sort of stuff. Channing Frye is at 52. Might be hard to do a sell high on him at the moment given the current situation, but there's no way that he is that highly ranked. Ken Fareed at 53. Same story, trending down. Source Castillo at 67. Not staying that high either. We're talking about more in, say you own him in a 16-team league, try and trade him away for someone who's probably more stable in the top 100, I would guess. And Langston Galloway at 68, that is extraordinarily fluky. He will not remain that high. The undervalued ones is probably where I look to more. Darren Williams is at 391 over the last 2 weeks. So again, if someone's really looking at these numbers and sees the rankings and goes, oh man, that's terrible, why would I want him? The minutes have been really limited in that time, so I think that Williams should be owned in basically all 12-team leagues. Derek Favors at 235. Again, his minutes reduced by some games where he had to leave early. He should be back. We don't have an exact timetable, but he should be back, I'd say, within the next week. Likely on a minutes limit to begin with, but he's going to really start pushing for that top 50 numbers eventually. The pencil's at 181. Yeah, fueled by some pretty low shooting percentages, especially from the field. He will be better than that. You might be able to get some value if you speak to the owner and say, look, Dirk's back. Or you use that and Dirk's back, maybe some of Barnes' touches go down. I think Barnes will be better than that. Dennis Schroeder comes in at 170. Yeah, he can be better than this. Definitely. He's a massive buy low to me, as is Goran Dragic at 125 and Eric Bledsoe at 58. Although Bledsoe's recent games have probably skewed him out of that category. All right, I am going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back to talk DFS for Saturday. All right, guys, we're back. Let's look at the perfect DFS lineups from a Monster Friday on FanDuel. We had Russ at 72.4 and Jameer Nelson at 43.3. He was a great punt play when all those Nuggets were ruled out. Nick Batum at 42.3, Vic Oladipo at 46.3. Both of those guys had great value coming in. Mello at 63.3 against the Hornets, always a good option. Wilson Chandler at 51.2, he was in a great spot as well. So a lot of these ones, you could actually see putting this lineup together. Until we get to David Lee at 31.9, which is out of the blue. Kev Love at 50, there was risk associated with that, with playing the Mavericks. And Nick Vucevic at 48.4, he's always a risky play at that price, and he turned in a monster. That total gave you 449.1. On DraftKings, Russ at 82.5, Nelson at 47.5, Mallow at 68, Myers Leonard at 32.25, Vucevic at 53.25, Oladipo 48, Wilson Chandler 55.25, and Mason Plumlee at 45.5 for a total of 431.25 points. All right. We'll get into these games now. We'll start breaking them down. There are 5 of them on Saturday, so back to some relative normalcy, I guess, in terms of games that are being played. The first one we're going to take a look at features the San Antonio Spurs, and they're taking on the Washington Wizards. We assume that Wall is playing. We don't know what the minutes are going to be like yet, so there is definite risk there, especially after he was played 39 minutes by Scotty Brooks in that game today. Let's look at the Wall is at 9,300, and with that risk associated, he dropped 51 today. He's averaging 52 over the last 3. But if they're playing the Spurs and the Spurs get a hold of them pretty quickly, which is a huge chance, your Wall might be looking at 27 minutes, 28 minutes. So that means that it's very hard to take that risk on using him. Tone Parker is at 45. When we talk about the Aussie sites later, we won't go through all the prices, but Tone Parker's at sub 4,000, so I like him on Moneyball. At 4,500, I'm not as keen in a matchup against Wall. He'll find it hard, I think, to return value there. Millsy at 4,000 had a decent game today, but I don't think he's a viable DFS guy to take a look at. At shooting guard, Brad Beals at 6,000. Danny Green, really good defender. He put up 27 today, Bealey, in the 38 minutes. Definitely not his best performance. He'd been playing pretty well. It is a light slate. He is a $300 discount player on FanDuel. So there is some appeal with Beal, but if they decide that they want to limit his minutes, which they probably won't because they're not handling it that way at all, which is weird to me, there's some risk with Beal, but I think he's a better option than what Johnny Wall is. Marcus Thornton's a horrible option. Dan Green at 4,200. I believe in Dan Green at 4,200. Probably a look at tournament because his upside is significantly high, and he does have a marginal amount of risk associated with him. Tomas Satoransky, he needs a starting role to be considered. Small forwards, Otto Porter's down to 5,900. That makes it beautiful to use him. The Kawhi Leonard matchup is a concern, so that's probably why I'd stay away. Otherwise, I do really like the Otto Porter price. As for Leonard at 8,600, just lock him in for 40 plus, maybe even 45. I do really like Leonard here. Oubre, nah. Power forwards, Markieff at 4,800. That is a super cheap price. Look, he wasn't spectacular today, but 24 points is fine at 4,800, and he can be better than that. So I really like Markieff. I think he's one of the better options that are on the board. LaMarcus Aldridge at 7,000. Didn't quite have the best game today. Whether Pop limits his minutes somewhat, as it's a back-to-back. Now, every team that we're talking about today is a back-to-back, so bear that in mind. But Pop, if the game is out of hand, he might see 28 or 29 out of Aldridge. So not a massive target, but there's something to be said about him. Dave Lee dropped 32 today. He's at 3,900. Would you go back to the well again? I reckon you consider it in a tournament just because of the Pau Gasol potential limitations. And Lee's being decent at 3,900, and say worst case scenario is like 15 points maybe in this back-to-back set. Maybe that's worst case. I don't know. Lee has marginal appeal. Centres, Marcin Gortat at 6,200. Yeah, that's solid. There's not much upside there. There's something to like about it, though. Pau Gasol, obviously, he'd been putting up some good games until he absolutely stunk today, dropping just the 9 points. So he is risky in this situation, but maybe they were saving him to play him bigger minutes in this one. So there's also the possibility that Pop does that. So there's something to be said for using Pau, but without much confidence, I say that. The New York Knicks, they take on the Charlotte Hornets yet again. In Charlotte this time, the Hornets are favoured by 6 and the total is 209. So not only did these two teams play yesterday, or play on Friday, but it was an overtime game. But they played each other, so they're in the same boat. Lance Thomas is questionable to return. I don't think that he plays. And Marvin Williams hasn't officially been ruled out, but I would be stunned if Marvin Williams plays. We've got him listed at doubtful at the moment. Absolutely stunned if he played. I reckon there's just mountains of value in this one. Just heaps of great picks. Derrick Rose at 5,800. Love that. I think that he's just going to give you high 20s pretty much every night. And you know I'm not a huge Derrick Rose fan at this point. 8,500 for Kemba. That might feel just a little bit too expensive. Struggled a little bit today. Generally does pretty well against the Knicks, but I'm not sure he's up to 8,500's worth of value. We're not looking at Ramon Sessions, really, and Brandon Jennings is up and down. He's a tournament player. Struggled today. I love Nick Batum at 6,700. He had a monster today. He should be looking at 30 to 35 pretty comfortably. And Courtney Lee at 3,700. He gets the minutes. He's a cheap value. He doesn't do much with them, but you can get 20 plus out of him at 3,700. I reckon you take that. So there's value in him. Justin Holiday and Jeremy Lamb, probably not so much. Mallow at 7,600. Love the Hornets matchup for him. Dropped 63 today. I think you're looking at 35 plus pretty comfortably for Mallow, so I do like that. Kid Gilchrist at 55. I don't like it at that salary. That is too inflated. Somehow his salary went up $300, and I have absolutely no idea why that would be. So I don't think we can really get excited about Kid Gilchrist. As for Marco Bellinelli at 4,200, sure, he's averaging 26 over the last 5. Good matchup for him, did well today. I think at 4,200, you can absolutely use Marco Bellinelli and have a relative degree of confidence in him, which is a weird thing to say. Power forward, 4,600, Frank Kaminsky, all over it. He's averaging 26.5 as is. He's going to get 30 plus, you would imagine, with Marvin struggling. Love Frank here in this spot. On the Knicks side of things, he's at 7,200. Yeah, look, 35 for Porzingis is not a hard bar for him to pass. So have a look at both of those guys can definitely be used. Cody Zeller at 4,500 only played 23 minutes today, had 24 points. I think that you can easily get 25 plus out of Zeller. Love him in the matchup. Noah, I'm not so keen on. 4,600 for him. Billy Hernan Gomez, Koch, they both had days today where they passed their value, but it's a risky proposition, and they weren't that much over it that I'd really consider using them in a lot of situations. Roy Hibbert and Spencer Hawes are not guys that we're going to be looking at. The Detroit Pistons and the Oklahoma City Thunder is the next game that's up. The Thunder are favoured by 5. The total here is 203 points. Let's look at the point guards. Russ, 11,900. Look, how can you go past Ross at the moment? He's averaging almost 64 points over the last 5. His lowest in the last 5 is 59, and that would be value. Now, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is a good defender, but point guards recently have been putting up big numbers against Detroit. So I think Russ is fine to use. We know how good he is. Ish Smith at 5,200. The salary's coming down to a spot where I consider it. Point guards have done well against Russ as well, as they generally do. 5,200 just is maybe $200 to $300 too highly priced for me, and I'd rather spend an extra $600 and get a guy like Derrick Rose, for example. At shooting guard, Oladipo's at 6,000. He's been smashing that out of the park. Yeah, Caldwell Pope's a bit of a concern, but I think that Oladipo is solid at 6,000 in both cash and tournaments. Caldwell Pope, 5,100. Strong run, averaging almost 32 across the last 3. So that means that an absolute 5-point turd burger is just around the corner. Does it come in this one? I would, if I had to bet 50-50, I would say yes. So he is a fade to me. But that's based on the fact that Oladipo is a pretty good defender, that he doesn't have a great history against Oklahoma City, and that's just the pattern that his career seems to be on. Anthony Morrow played 20 minutes in today's game. He's at minimum salary, but I don't think we need to be looking at him too closely. Marcus Morris at 4,900. The salary keeps coming down, but honestly, the dude just isn't putting up numbers. He's not interesting to me. Andre Robertson at 41, I don't really care for either. And Stan Johnson, who knows if he's even going to play? I'd imagine he does, but there's issues with him. Considerable issues at the moment. Power forward Toby Harris is really on a cold streak. He's at 5,200. I think this is a great spot for him to turn it around. He only needs 25 points. His last 3 against the Thunder have yielded him 33 points. It's not necessarily the same Thunder team or even the same Toby Harris with the way that he's playing, but I think this is a great opportunity to use Toby at 5,200. Enes Kanter at 48. Nah, I can't get behind using Kanter. Yeah, he's going to be matching up against Harris some of the time. Drummond's not a good matchup. It just doesn't look like a great spot for Ennis. Johnny Lua at 44. He's rock solid cash-ish sort of guy for 23 to 24 points on most nights and actually dropped to 31 today. So he is pretty good value. And Domantas Sabonis is minimum salary. Always look, if you're looking and you need to squeeze Russ in, maybe put Domantas in and hope you get 20 out of him, because if you did it today, you would have been happy because he gave you 22. But he could give you 10. So that is the risk associated with him. Centers, Steve Adams is down to 4,800. Not even really returning that sort of value of late. The Drummond matchup does worry me. Joffrey Lavernier, minimum salary, 24 points today. He's definitely flyer-worthy at minimum salary, but no trust whatsoever. Andre Drummond at 8,400. It's probably a little bit expensive. He's in the mix with other guys like Hassan Whiteside and Karl Anthony Towns as the high-priced centers. So you can look at him, but I'm not 100% sure that this matchup against Adams in a situation where he hasn't done well before Drummond is worth 8,400. I just don't really see that being a great spot to use him unless you've just got excess cash floating around. Memphis and Miami, the rematch of Friday. We don't have a spread released just yet for this one. Justice Winslow is questionable. Goran Dragic is questionable with their wrist and elbow issue, respectively. Zachy Randolph, I don't think he plays with the death of his mother. So there's obviously a few situations to monitor here. If we look at the point guards, if Dragic plays at 6,400, I wouldn't mind using him in a tournament, but I also wouldn't be hugely confident. I love Tyler Johnson, though, at 4,700. Even more so if Dragic is out. He's averaging 25 in the last 5 anyway, and some of that's been with Dragic, some without. At 4,700, he is one of the best cheap options out there. 3,800 for Andy Harrison. We'd have to assume that Conley has some sort of limits happening again in this one, but even if not, with the injuries to Ennis and to Parsons and with Carter and Allen potentially being limited as well, Harrison's going to get some minutes, and he should be able to pass 20 points, as he's done in basically every game over the last week or so. So he's in play. As for Conley, 7,600, well, we just don't know what they're going to do with him at this point, so he's probably a stay away, especially given the way that Miami has been handling point guards so far this season. I love Joshie Richardson at 4,000. Yes, there'd been a couple of stinkers in the last few games, but he bounced back with a 24-pointer today. He's at 4,000. It's not an expensive salary, so I do like using Josh there. Tone Allen's at 3,900. He is a tournament punt guy, but this back-to-back situation is not ideal. We've got Troy Williams and we've got Troy Daniels. Williams is the guy that you want. He's a small forward listed guy. Daniels is a shooting guard. But surely they're just punt tournament options, and that is literally it. Williams had 19 points in his 20 minutes today. The other small forwards out there, Justice Winslow, at 5,000, he'd definitely be worth a punt if he actually plays. I would like to get him into a lineup if he plays, but we don't know that at this point. James Johnson's at 4,100. He's been turning in some pretty impressive numbers. Former team again for him. I like it at 4,100. I think there's real value if you're cheapening up at that spot. Vincy Carter, we just don't know what they're doing at the minute, so that makes him a risky play there. Power forwards, JaMychal Green at 4,500. No Zebo. He's been on a decent roll himself, Green, so I think he's okay. Probably more of a cash guy than a tournament guy. Derek Williams, Jarrell Martin, Josh McRoberts, Luke Babbitt, Deontay Davis, none of those are probably going to play enough to have an impact. Hassan Whiteside's been struggling, but he has dropped $400 on FanDuel. He's down to 8,900. You think that a big game is going to come at some point. It's always hard to get them against Marcus Gasol, though. So it's him. You got Drummond. Karl Anthony Towns is probably the guy that we do look for in this center matchup, but Whiteside's price is coming back down, and a big game's around the corner, but I just don't know if it comes against Gasol. He just hasn't been good historically against Gasol. As for Gasol at 7,100, minutes limits are a real issue, and that probably keeps me away from using him. We've got one game left to talk about. That is the Minnesota Timberwolves. They take on the Golden State Warriors. They were victorious in Golden State last season. The Wolves, the Warriors are favored by 15 here. The total is 223. Draymond is questionable with his ankle contusion. If he misses, David West becomes a great punt play who would likely start unless they went Kevon Looney, so we'd have to watch that situation. But both West and Looney would be guys that we could definitely have a look at. I'd favour West a little bit. Let's look at the point guards. Rick Rubio's salary is dropping, but at $6,000, it hasn't dropped far enough, so he's not someone that I'm keen on. He does play well against Steph, and he does play well against the Warriors, so maybe you want to go contrarian in a tournament. Rubio could be that guy, but I don't think so. 9,300 for Steph. Blowout risk is a huge issue here. 9,300 is pretty expensive. I can see it, but I also don't love it. Shawnee Livingston, Chris Dunn, Tyus Jones, we won't be using those guys. Shooting guard, Klay Thompson at 6,000. I think that's really solid in cash. I think you can get 30 out of him basically every night. And Zachary Levine at 5,800. Well, I would rather take Klay over Zach, but Zach probably has... Oh, no, he doesn't. No, I was going to say he has more tournament upside, but no, take Klay over Zach. Pat McCaw, Ian Clark, Brandon Rush, they're not going to have an impact regardless if Clark plays or not. Wiggos at 6,200. Bit of a bounce back today, had 31. At 6,200, I think that he is fine to use, especially with that salary drop of $300. He's done well against Golden State in the past, averaging a fantasy point per minute over the last 3 times he played. And we know that he's going to get big minutes. So Tibbs is going to get him out there. So we're looking at 35 plus for Wiggo here. I think that, well, that's his upside. 40 is probably his upside. So I do like using Wiggo in this spot. As for Durant at 9,900, fine. Yeah, 45 is almost his lowest score in his last 5 has been 43. So I don't think you've got any concerns about him getting close to 4x value and pushing up to 5. Iguodala is not an option. Shabazz Muhammad is not an option. Power forwards. Draymond's at 8,000. I wouldn't have really loved him at 8,000 anyway. But with the ankle issue, this being the last game of the night, can't see how you can use him. Gorgie Jeng at 5,900. Definitely more in favour of that. He's been putting up some quiet numbers, averaging 31 across the last 5. Some decent performances. Probably more a cash than a tournament guy, but there's definitely something to be used there. Nemanja Bjelica. Dave West is the other guy we want to look at. 3,600. Obviously, that's gets boosted. Not his salary, but his production gets boosted if Draymond is out. For the centers, Towns is at 8,800. Warriors do limit center production, but Towns has got a pretty good record in the couple of times that he's played against them. So I think that with his salary coming down 200, with the other issues with Drummond, with Whiteside, with his other high-price centers, if you're looking to go high-price at center, Towns is probably going to be one of the better guys in that group of players. But you can make arguments for all of them, to be honest. At centre, Zaza, Cole Aldrich, JaVale. We're not going to be using those guys. Let's take a look now at the picks of the day on both FanDuel and DraftKings. We've got on FanDuel Tyler Johnson at 4,700, Derrick Rose at 58, and Russ Westbrook at 11,900. Shooting guard, Joshie Richardson, 4,000, Nick Batum, 67. Small forward, James Johnson, 41. Mallow, 76. Leonard, 86. Power forwards, Frank Kaminsky, 46. Kristaps, 72. And at centre, Code Zeller, 45. And I did slip Whiteside in there at 8,900, but that's just a tournament play. He is due a big bounce-back game, but the Gasol risk is a considerable one. So if you're looking for safer, it's probably Towns, but Whiteside comes in as a tournament. On DraftKings, Andy Harrison, 3,300. Rose at 56 and Westbrook at 11,900. Shooting guards, Lee, 37. Batum, 68. Joshie Richardson, 49. Toby Harris, 57. Kawhi, 83. Power forwards, Frankie Kaminsky, 48. Markieff, 5,000. And Durant, 96. And the centers, Zeller, 4,000. Gortat, 55. And Whiteside, 8,600. Same story as over on FanDuel. Now for the Aussies in the house. On Moneyball, Andy Harrison, minimum salary 35. Rubio at 54, much more appealing at that salary. Steph at 89, also much more appealing at that salary. For the shooting guards, Joshie Richardson minimum. Brad Beal 5,000. Small forwards, Mick Kidd-Gilchrist 48. Mallow 77. Kawhi 85. Power forwards 43 for Frank Kaminsky, 51 for Markieff. And the centre, Steve Adams, 5,000. Drummond, 75. Great price for him. And Towns, 86. On Draft Stars, we've got Andy Harrison at 5,000, the minimum. Ish Smith, 95. And Russ at 24,000, almost 25% of your salary cap. But you can pad out your roster with guys like Harrison. Shooting guard, Troy Williams at 5,000. That is a deep, deep tournament punt. Joshy Richardson at 8,850 and Wigo at 14,050. Small forwards, James Johnson 6,450, Otto Porter 10,700 and Kawhi at 17,000. For the power forwards, Domantas Sabonis 5,450, Frank Kaminsky 8,250 and Carmelo at 16,350. And the centres, Johnny Lua 7,650, Gortat 11,250 and Whiteside 16,850. We're done for today's podcast, guys. Don't forget, subscribe on iTunes, leave a review, check out Basketball Monster, and check out the rest of the Locked On Podcast Network as well. Find yourself a podcast for a team that you want to listen to and hear what the great hosts have got to say. We are done for today's show, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Glenn Robinson III.